But society needs to start making space for women's rights, of course, to have equality and non-sinful masculine behaviour pushed upon them, which is what is labelled toxic masculinity. But we should start making space for men to be men and to express their masculinity, so fathers can be fathers, so they can be there for their children, so they can become and do the most masculine thing that is available to a father, is to spend time with his children. But we overcomplicate it and we demasculinize ourselves, because instead of spending time with our children, we're watching television or playing a game or out drinking with our friends. We demasculinize ourselves by not doing the very most masculine thing any man can do. Be there for your children in the best physical, mental capacity that God gave you.
Descend upon my people with the power of my love, 'cause I believe in truth and I believe in love, and I believe we are protected from the spirits above when I'm gone. Please.
Hey guys, I am down in the valley. You haven't seen me here for a while, and the valley that we are in the planning stages of protecting all the way up. But having some time in nature is it's very important for me. It's hugely important. And yesterday I posted on Instagram. If you're not following Instagram, I sometimes I post most days on there, and I sometimes post things that I've written myself, and I was posting about masculinity and its relationship to nature, and also what it means to be masculine and to be a father. Now, I hope you can hear me well over the water. There's a lot of rain here at the moment. As a man growing up in the West, I could see that it was definitely becoming very difficult for men, because their masculinity was not catered for inside society. In fact, the liberal agenda, to some degree, or just liberalism gone too far, is the problem, because the men need rights that are non-feminine, because men have a masculine energy. And no, I'm not sexist, it's just a fact of life. You have a gender role based on the biology of the workings of yourself. I can prove that effortlessly because I live here away from the comfort of money and development. And I'm a Maasai. I'm part of the Maasai tribe now. There are other tribes, the Hadzabe as well, who are great examples, that when a child is growing up, the mother must, because there's no formula, etc., have the baby with her, because she has the breasts to provide the breast milk. And that normally lasts at least 2 to 3 years here. And it would do in nature ideally. That's the healthiest thing for your child. The man can't do that. So traditionally, in a natural setting, the women do stay with the children because they can't move around and hunt or move with the cattle, put the baby out in the sun. It doesn't work, you know. It's not a valid thing for a woman to carry a baby to work. Now you'll see it digging in the fields, baby strapped on the backs out of a lack of necessity. Because there's no one to look after the baby. But if you have a family unit with a man still, and the man hasn't run away, then the women must stay close to the encampment. And the Hadzabe, the women stay, they dig for roots. It's non-mobile, yes, it's physical labour, but the babies can play, stay with them, they can watch them. The men go out and hunt, and they have to hunt to get the food. The boys then automatically see that the women have a certain role based on and founded on the anatomy of the woman. Biologically, due to the circumstance that she has the breasts and the milk, then the woman must stay with the baby, predominantly immobile here. So the Hadzabe is an unchanged culture for hundreds of thousands of years. So our ancestors all did it that way. So to ask men all of a sudden to abandon their masculine inbuilt biology is insanity. And you've got royal families saying they'll raise their children gender neutral. Celebrities like my old friend Russell Brand said he'd raise his child gender neutral. And I get you shouldn't give stereotypes to a child based on the culture you're in, But to say that a child does not adopt a gender comes from people with far too much monetary comfort, because in the real world, naturally, that doesn't occur. Little boys will pick up the bow and arrow in the Hadzabe tribe and mimic the father, because the girls mimic the mother. And that happens because the boys can clearly observe there are anatomical differences that mean they have biological differences, which means they express themselves in different ways, all based on rearing a child. So for hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors have been in nature, and men have had a masculinity to express. And there's nothing wrong with a man wanting to express his want to provide and care for a family. And if a woman also wants that and to stay at home with the family, they are doing something very natural. But the liberalist agenda will say that that man is non-progressive and the woman's under the thumb and oppressed by the man. My wife was a feminist with a skinhead when I met her. She embraced her feminism as a mother, and she is happier now doing that. So I'm not saying that's the same for everyone, but for her, she was happier. But inside society now, there's a construct from liberalism whereby liberalists judge the traditional family unit. They judge a man for being non-progressive, for wanting to express what he is anatomically meant to express, the want to provide and care, etc. And thus, because men are underserved inside Western society, every society at this point pretty much, they get to the point where they feel so empty because they are not in their natural habitat that they reach for distractions. They want to express their masculinity. There are no male rights for that. We act in society like that doesn't exist, but it does. And young men are not given that opportunity, and now it's getting to the point where if they want to express it, many people judge them because they are more liberal apparently than them. And this is not how it should be. It's damaging. Where's the men's rights in there? You have lots of feminists wanting to act like masculine and lots of men who are feminine, and that's absolutely fine, but the predominant average of man wants to express a natural masculine energy. And when he doesn't, he fills that void with distractions and stimuli, be it alcohol, drugs, computer games, media, pornography, all of these things. And they are non-constructive, they are non-beneficial for the subject, and they get lost in it. And then you miss a dynamic from families. The masculine father figure has gone. The media does a good job at ruining that as well. Every father in sitcoms is always a bumbling idiot. Men are not bumbling idiots. Men have abilities and strength, and they have a masculinity that can be expressed. And yes, they can express feminine energy too. But they can, damn sure they can express masculinity better than most women. This is natural, perfectly okay. Not to say that some women are. See, my mind is so aware of the liberalist movement that I feel a need to correct my language and to keep explaining that I'm not being judgmental on feminine or masculine. I'm not saying women can't be masculine and men can't be feminine. I'm not saying it, but I feel a need to say it because that's the climate of our consciousness on the planet at the moment. It's quite an unusual thing. Even I feel a need to explain myself in case people are judging what I say incorrectly. So the family unit is missing an important figure, and the masculine father is he. And thus the children then mimic and fill the void of having that family aspect dynamic missing from the family, and they too end up on drink, drugs, alcohol, computer games, pornography. Now, if men would be traditional men and be where they were originally, ancestrally living, here, in nature, if men would spend time in the forest, out on their own, this would change. Because if you plant a tree, is what I said on Instagram, in sandy soil, it'll grow, but it'll claw and scratch and scrape to try and get what it needs from that ground, and it'll never grow that well. When you move that tree to forest like this, where the soil is nutrient rich, and that tree will grow in exactly how it's supposed to be, and no other tree around them will judge that tree's growth, and no person will judge how the tree is growing. They will accept it, and they will say that is a strong tree there, that is growing extremely well because it has the right soil and foundation. Men are like trees. We are no different, and we belong to the same habitat as a tree. We belong to the same soil. And to root ourselves in the foundation of a city which ultimately manufactures a desire and a need, and a void that makes you require the need for stimuli, for media, for alcohol, drink and drugs and all of this stuff. When you plant a man there, he's like a tree in the sand. You know, he can't get a proper grip on himself. But if you move him to the fertile soils of nature, where all of his ancestors dwelled, everything will improve. His mental health, his connection with the world, his understanding of things, his sense of masculinity, his confidence, all of these things will change if a man gets a chance to spend time alone out in nature. If a man gets an opportunity to spend time alone where he's from, in nature, in the forest, in the moorlands, in the grasslands, in the mountains. Because what happens is, the man is forced into a state of discipline. There is no distraction in this forest. There's nothing in here to demasculinize me. There's nothing, no computer games, no temptations, no pornography, no societal rules that label anything masculine as toxic. That's all absent, and it's just a man on his own in nature as he was meant to be, and he can grow as he naturally desires to grow, just as a tree does. And he can grow towards the light, just as a tree does. And the longer a man spends in nature growing in that way, the easier it is when he goes back to that system to see the tricks that are after him. To see that TV series are not designed to entertain you, they're designed to hook you. They're designed to make you a slave to watch the next episode, the next season, to get money. They see that the alcohol is not conducive of creating the best, most productive human beings. They see that escaping in computer games in moderation might be pleasurable, but when men are doing it all day long and they have children who need them, that it's very pathetic and damaging and wrong. And it's not pathetic for the men to be doing that, it's pathetic that we have a society that allowed that to happen. Now, in some retrospects, people will say because of that hook into the city life is why we have remaining pockets of nature that people like me can sit in. And that might be true to some degree. And perhaps there will always be a city dweller who will be happier than a nature goer. But I'm speaking from my perspective as a man, that I reconnected massively with my masculinity, especially after my masculinity was damaged due to Western laws and systems surrounding children of mine who were aborted, etc. The damage done to my masculinity was tremendous, and I spent a long time alone in nature. But I didn't spend time in nature then go back to an Airbnb or go back to a hotel or go back to a tent. I spent time in nature fully, in survival mode. In the UK, I was blessed. I lived in areas where you would go into the forests, big forests, and there'd be no one there ever, and you could do that. And here I do the same. I'm the man who comes and sleeps in the forest and by himself, just as I want to connect with it. I want to feel at home with the home that grew me. You know, the soil that grows these trees and the water that feeds those trees in the soil is where we came from. We're built up of the same elements, and I'm an expression of this forest as much as you are. Just as I knew that feeling immediately in Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, the most ancient forest I've ever been in, and I sat with mountain gorilla, and I saw it. They are the forest, I thought. They are the expression of the forest, and it's true. The forest relies heavily on them for perpetuating their seed growth, etc. They are the forest. They are not a being inside the forest, they are an expression of it. And somewhere, at some point, we were too, and we must reconnect with that. And as men who are underserved in society, sitting in your natural habitat will reinstate a lot of the damaged masculinity that Western society creates. The shame, the internal disgust that you are using things you shouldn't, the fact that you've been out and mistreated women when you're drunk, speaking from my own perspective of my past here. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. I'm not a perfect man. Nobody is. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone after all. What I'm saying is, I come closer to being a perfect man the longer I spend in nature, away from the persons who are programmed by the monetary system. Because money creates divisiveness, it creates evil in people. And those people can drag you into their energy. And when you're down here, they won't be here, those people, because they're scared of nature. And the reason they're scared of nature is because they're not connected to their home. They don't know what they are. They live in an imprint, an idea in their brain of what they are. And thus this area of the world is not comfortable for them, because the construct they were told by the persons who said you belong to these boundaries that your ancestors did not create, that we told you belong to, is a false personage. And for men, the damage done by that is phenomenal, because they are suppressed and their strength is pushed down. And we are told that women can do all that men can do, and we are left wondering, then what are the masculine, feminine attributes then? Because realistically, we know that it's delusional to say that there's no difference. So, anatomically, we are very different, but society needs to start making space for women's rights, of course, to have equality and non-sinful masculine behaviour pushed upon them, which is what is labelled toxic masculinity. But we should start making space for men to be men and to express their masculinity, so fathers can be fathers, so they can be there for their children, so they can become and do the most masculine thing that is available to a father, is to spend time with his children. But we overcomplicate it and we demasculinize ourselves, because instead of spending time with our children, we're watching television or playing a game, or we're out drinking with our friends. We demasculinize ourselves by not doing the very most masculine thing any man can do. Be there for your children in the best physical, mental capacity that God gave you. Man needs nature. And if you're rooted in the wrong place and you feel you need a change, the beauty is with man, unlike a tree, you can uproot yourself from the sandy soil and you can go to the fertile soils of nature. And even if you have to go back to the sandy soils to sleep, you can still root yourself in the fertile soils of nature, even if it's once or twice a week, so as you are there, doing what every ancestor in your bloodline ever did. Every ancestor who carefully preserved life and passed it to you. Every male spent time in the forest. And don't expect this to be the first generation where liberalism can somehow mean that we eradicate that from the very genetics of what we are. Because it's not possible. And there's nothing sexist about it. Because men are men and women are women. And yes, we can achieve equally in life, but we have different chemicals and anatomy that mean we need to furnish ourselves with the right environment. And speaking from the perspective of a husband and father, my wife is no different to I. That if she roots herself here, she's here with me now. She feels immeasurable better mental health and joy than if she stays rooted in the sandy soils of city life. So make time to root yourself in the best soil that is available to you, which is that, which is full of the wavy natural curves of nature instead of the sharp edges of city. I love you all. God bless, guys. Bye.